I promise I can help you here, the barefoot girl murmured, her voice quivering softly like the gentle ripples dancing across the fountain behind her. The marble courtyard of Falcon Dynamics shimmered under the noonday sun, its fountains whispering against a backdrop of wealth and control. Polished glass towers loomed above, reflecting a world built on ambition. Employees hurried across the courtyard, their eyes fixed on screens and schedules, too busy to notice the small boy sitting alone by the fountain. His name was Ethan Cole, the 10-year-old son of Adrian Cole, the billionaire CEO who built this empire from code and cold logic. Ethan had been deaf since he was 2. The world around him existed in silence, a place where even his father's voice was a ghost he'd never heard. Adrian strode past, phone pressed to his ear, voice sharp and commanding. Sell the shares. Double the projections. I don't want excuses. He didn't notice his son watching him, the boy's eyes full of longing and distance. But before we dive into what happens next, I'd love to know, where are you tuning in from today? Drop your country in the comment below and please like the video. Thank you. Now let's continue. Then, through the golden haze of sunlight, a girl appeared. She was barefoot, no older than 15, her hair tangled like wind-blown straw. A tray hung from her arm, filled with faded wildflowers and small wooden carvings. Security guards often drove her away, but this time fate held them back. Her name was Raina, and she didn't walk like a beggar. She walked like someone who had seen too much and carried something sacred inside her silence. Their eyes met. Ethan's quiet world met hers, wild, unpolished but alive. Raina smiled softly and raised her hands. She signed, "Hello." For the first time in years, Ethan's face lit up. Someone spoke in his language. Someone saw him. Ethan hesitated, unsure, then signed back, "Hi." His movements were clumsy but eager. Raina knelt in front of him, her voice trembling as she whispered, "You can understand me?" He nodded quickly, his expression alive with wonder. Moments later, his smile faltered. He rubbed at his ear, grimacing. "It itches," he signed. Raina leaned closer, her brow furrowing. "Don't move," she murmured. Before he could react, she gently touched his ear, peering closer. Then her hand stilled. Something dark glistened just inside. With trembling fingers, she reached in and pulled out a small black writhing shape. Alive, twitching, a parasite. The second it left his ear, Ethan gasped. The world exploded. The roar of the fountain. The murmur of voices. The flutter of wings overhead. Car horn blared in the distance. Sound real, raw, chaotic. Crashed into his world like a wave. He clutched his ears, tears spilling down his face. Then, in a hoarse, unfamiliar voice, he shouted, "Dad!" Every head turned. Adrian Cole froze mid-step, his phone falling from his hand. The courtyard went silent, except for the trembling voice of his son echoing against marble and water. "Dad!" Ethan gasped again, the word broken but beautiful. For a heartbeat, time itself held its breath. Then rage replaced wonder. Adrian rushed forward, grabbing Ethan's arm and pulling him away. "Who are you?" he barked at Raina. "What did you do to him?" "Sir, she began, but his fury cut her off. "Security!" His voice sliced through the air. "Get her out of here." Guards began to move, but then Ethan spoke again, voice rough but steady. "Don't hurt her." The words hit Adrian harder than any blow could. His son, his silent child, had just spoken. Hours later, bright fluorescent light flooded Falcon Medical Center, the company-owned hospital. Machines beeped, doctors whispered, and the world of science closed in around the boy who had just defied it. Adrian stood behind the glass, fists clenched, watching the specialists crowd around Ethan. His mind spun, fear, disbelief, and something darker, guilt. The head physician entered, clipboard in hand, his tone too calm. "Mr. Cole, it's extraordinary. The obstruction seems to have been biological, removed by the girl. We'll observe him for a while." Adrian's voice cracked. You're telling me a barefoot girl fixed what your experts couldn't in 8 years? Sir, the doctor began, eyes shifting away. These things are complex. Complex. Adrian cut him off. You took my money, you promised miracles, and you never even looked. Behind him, Raina stood quietly near the wall, her eyes steady, her hands still faintly stained with dried blood. They didn't look because they didn't care, she said softly. They saw your name, not your son. Adrian turned, anger flickering, but behind it something else. Shame. The doctor cleared his throat and slid a folder across the table. You should see this. Adrian opened it and froze. Inside were official reports, stamped and signed, all claiming Ethan's condition was permanent. But the final note shattered him. Maintain diagnosis to preserve research funding. Cole account approved. His fingers trembled. The letters swam before his eyes. They had kept his son deaf for profit. He tore the papers apart, the ripping sound echoing like thunder. You monsters, he whispered. You sold my son's silence. Raina said nothing. Her eyes held the kind of empathy that didn't need words. For the first time, Adrian Cole, the man who built machines that listened to the world, realized he had never listened to his own child. The hospital corridor felt too white, too clean for the weight in Adrian's chest. He sat beside Ethan's bed, his hand resting over the boy's. The child was awake, tracing gentle circles on his father's wrist, feeling the rhythm of his pulse. You're safe, Adrian whispered, his voice shaking. I promise I'll fix this. Ethan turned his head, lips moving slowly. Not your fault. The words came fragile and unsure, but real. Adrian's throat closed. He had spent years thinking money could replace presence, that paying experts meant loving enough. Now he understood he had been buying guilt, not healing. Behind him, Raina leaned against the doorframe, silent. Her gaze was steady but tired. The hospital light caught the faint bruises on her fingers. Adrian turned to her. How did you even know to look? Raina's reply came soft but sure. Because I saw him, she said. Not his illness. Not your name. Just him. He stared, speechless. You're just a kid, he finally murmured. How do you talk like someone who's lived a lifetime? Raina smiled faintly. Because when you grow up on the streets, you hear everything no one else listens to. The room fell quiet again, filled only with the soft hum of machines and the small rhythmic breaths of a boy rediscovering sound. Adrian's eyes glistened. I've been deaf too, he said. Just, in a different way. Night crept over the city, its lights flickering through the hospital windows. Adrian sat by his son, whispering a vow not to his board, not to investors, but to the boy whose world he had once ignored. I'll tear down every system that profits from pain, he whispered. I'll stop paying for hope. I'll start fighting for truth. Outside, the storm quieted. For the first time, silence felt peaceful. Morning arrived wrapped in cold mist. Adrian, Ethan, and Raina stepped out of the hospital into a world that felt heavier and more honest. Ethan clung to his father's sleeve, flinching at the sounds of traffic and voices. Every honk, every shout was new. Terrifying, overwhelming. But when Raina smiled, he steadied. In the car no one spoke. Adrian stared at his reflection in the tinted glass, no longer a titan of industry, but a father learning humility. Across from him, Raina's hand still bore marks from the night before, and he wanted to thank her. But how do you thank someone who gives your child back their world? When they reached home, Ethan followed Raina everywhere. Into the kitchen, the garden, the living room. He didn't see her as a savior, just a friend who listened. Adrian watched quietly, the sight stirring something new inside him, hope mixed with guilt. That evening, he found Raina by the window, gazing at the skyline. Why did you help him? He asked softly. You didn't even know us. Her voice trembled slightly. Because no one helped my brother, she said. He lost his hearing from an infection. The clinic turned us away because we couldn't pay. He died before I turned 12. Adrian's chest tightened. I'm sorry. She shook her head. Don't be. Just make sure no one else's pain becomes someone's profit. He nodded slowly. Then help me. Not with money. With truth. She looked up at him, eyes steady. Start by listening to him. That night, Adrian sat beside his son again. What do you hear now? He asked. Ethan smiled. His voice small but certain. Everything. Adrian pulled him close, tears slipping down his cheek. Then you'll never hear silence again. Not while I'm alive. Outside the wind stirred. Raina stepped into the night, her silhouette fading into darkness, barefoot and unafraid. The girl who had nothing had given a billionaire the one thing he could never buy. His humanity. Days later, the story flooded headlines. The miracle at Falcon Dynamics. Adrian stood outside the same hospital where the truth began, holding a new document. Not a check this time, but a legal demand for a full investigation into the medical corporations that had profited from silence. When the board members pleaded with him to reconsider, Adrian's voice was calm but unshakable. You turned my son's pain into business, he said. Now the world will hear what you've done. Nearby, Ethan sat sketching in a notepad, his laughter filling the air. The sound was uneven, cracked, and beautiful. Every laugh was rebellion, against silence, against greed, against indifference. In the distance, Raina watched quietly from across the street, her feet leaving prints on wet pavement. She was ready to disappear back into the world that had forgotten her. Adrian turned, eyes finding her one last time. You gave me back my son, he said softly. How do I thank you? Raina's lips curved in a faint smile. You don't owe me anything. Just promise to keep listening to him and to those no one hears. Then she walked away, fading into the sunrise. The next morning, the city glimmered with new light. Adrian Cole stood on the balcony of his tower, watching the world move. For the first time, he didn't see markets or data. He saw people. Ethan's laughter drifted from the garden below, pure and real. Adrian closed his eyes, hearing not with ears but with heart. He finally understood. Wealth can build towers, but compassion builds bridges. All his life he'd chased noise, meetings, deals, power, but the truest sound he'd ever heard was a small, trembling voice calling, Dad! Final reflection. Sometimes we confuse hearing with listening. But real listening begins in the heart. When we choose empathy over ego, when we see people instead of profit, we rediscover what it means to be human. One barefoot girl reminded a billionaire that silence isn't the absence of sound, it's the absence of love. And once love speaks, the whole world begins to hear again. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that compassion can change lives more than money ever could, then don't let it end here. Subscribe to Echoes of Life Stories, where every tale echoes with truth, humanity, and hope. Share this story, leave a comment, and let your voice inspire others. Because sometimes, one story can make someone listen again, love again, or believe again. Join our family and keep the echoes of life alive. Subscribe now, and never miss a story that speaks to the heart.